Like and subscribe in the next 5 seconds to receive a week of good luck, so like and subscribe. r/AskReddit. Men of Reddit, what creepy things have women done to you? Weird staring girl. When I was in high school, I noticed a girl just staring at me while I was eating lunch with friends in the cafeteria. I don't really think much of it that day. The next day I see the same girl just staring at me again. This time I think maybe this girl likes me or a friend sitting next to me. This girl is not ugly or anything, just a normal girl. This keep happening like almost every day for 2 weeks or so. She even eats food just staring at me. Sometimes I see her standing in the hall staring while I'm waiting for a class to start. Even when I went to the basement with another group of friends to have lunch, she is there. So after a hallway death stare incident, I get creeped out and tell my friends in a class about this. They don't believe me or make some jokes and laugh. So one day at lunch I whisper to my friends that this girl has been staring at me for 2 weeks. It's creeping me out. They look at her and tell me that they have noticed that too, but didn't say anything. I'm hoping it's just a weird crush she has, so I just end up going up to her and say hi. She just keeps staring for 15 seconds. I say, why do you keep staring at me every day? She continues staring for 30 seconds or so. I tell her to please stop doing that and walk away. Next day, nope. There she is. Thank God she moved out to a different school after a few weeks. At least she didn't follow me to my home, I think. Oh man, when I was younger, 22 I think, I signed up to work an event at the job I was at. I had to work a table with an activity and help these Girl Scouts craft something. So these two 13-year-old girls came up and started making crafts. Then they asked me for my phone number and I told them no. Then they asked my name and I told them no. They constantly asked for both of those and I refused. A female coworker came up and started chatting with me. The girls then asked her for my info and she gave it away. I was pissed. And thinking back, I'm still pissed. One of them started texting me immediately. I told her to stop and she laughed and walked away. I blocked her number. The next day I got a FB friend request from her and blocked it. Then I started getting messages from her. The same coworker gave her my work email address and my Space account. She was very persistent in getting me to talk to her and I hated it. Finally I messaged her troop leader and told her about what was going on. She just said she'd take care of it and I never heard from her again. I think not just her age, but how persistent she was what creeped me out the most about her. Ex-girlfriend cheated on me with an abusive ex-boyfriend from a few years ago in high school. Found out and living an hour away. I planned to break up that weekend when I saw her again. Confronted her and she went crazy and tried using a blender on my dick before it unplugged from the wall. Got her out of my apt and went to work. Came home that night to find she broke in my apt and stole my cat. Never did see the cat again, but she is now overweight, baby to the ex-BF she cheated on me with, and the ex fled the state. Family kicked her out of the house, and I'm doing just fine in life now. Edit. For those asking why a blender, for whatever reason that was the first thing she had grabbed and I was about a foot away from her. Yes, she took off the top exposing the blades. I have not seen the cat since, sadly. Even worse, I guess I forgot to mention, the cat was only 3 months old, tabby female cat named Nika. My first week of college I started dating a girl, we'll call her Kathy, and cut it off after 2 weeks as it felt a bit weird. I had left my planner in her room. This should date the story. An actual paper book that kept my calendar and assignments and appointments. I kept asking when I could get it back and she kept making excuses. This was strange as we lived in the same building 1 floor apart. I finally got it back, thanked her, went on with my life. And then I found her edits to my calendar. In the past and in the future, she'd written sex with Kathy in various appointment blocks. Some entries were more descriptive, really great 6, came twice, etc. and they were written from my perspective. They started on the day we met and extended several weeks into the future. I've never had sex with Kathy. When I was in medical school, a girl 3 years my junior started obsessing over me. Initially it was kinda mild in the "I have a crush on you" sense. She'd ask my friends about me and messaged me on SocMed from her friends' accounts. Chalked it up to being young. Then she started to mess with girls that I'm close to, including my sister, telling them that they don't deserve me and that I'm hers. Also started hanging out at my neighbor's place and refused to leave until they call me out for some stupid reason and whatnot. And she'd hang out in the neighborhood I live in and pretend that we bumped into each other on accident. Oh, and I would occasionally post music I like on FB or Twitter, and she would post music of her own as a response because she's convinced that all those music I post is for her. Then in my final year she wrote this 80-page letter in which she professed her love and compared me to some Messiah shit. Oh, and the best part, it's been a few years since then. A few months ago she started working where I am. The nightmare fucking continues. Made a note for this. It's become the dark event that's divided our town. It happened to a friend I knew. Will Bright had a well-paying job. One day he parties with this girl. She claimed he raped her, but refused to speak with police. Despite this, and despite the fact that he had recorded a phone call with her admitting she was lying, his life was ruined. I watched him go on a downward spiral, and I had a couple decade-long friends turn on me just for being around him. Well, a year and 6 months after the allegations, he started getting phone calls from her demanding money. He agreed to meet her in a hotel room. Once she arrived, he shot and killed her, then turned the gun on himself. It's taken a long time to cope, and it scares me how moments after any allegation, people form a mob for justice. I know victims should be encouraged to come forward, but when a guy has proof, the girl wouldn't go to the police. She willingly met him in a hotel room after essentially trying to blackmail him. That should be enough to prove one's innocence. I lost a good friend. I met Robin, a girl from another town, and we became pen pals for our senior year. Toward the end of the year I broke up with my girlfriend and she asked me to her prom. I went with her. We had a nice evening, but not much happened physically. That was the last time I saw her. Over the summer I got another girlfriend and Robin joined the Navy. She sent her last letter before she left for basic. I got a letter 2 years later asking if I wanted her back and that she was holding out for me. 17 years later she called my parents' number and got my number. This time she told me about how her life was a mess and never forgot about me. She hinted, but didn't beg for a date, and luckily we were half the country apart. 2 years after that she tried friending my mother, who she's never met, on Facebook in order to find me. Last year at Christmas she finally found my account and tried to friend me. I matched with a girl on Tinder. Talked to her for a few weeks on the app. She was sweet, smart, funny, ambitious. Seemed like the total package. I asked her on a date. Picked her up. She lived a town over, so it was a really short drive, and we went out, and she was just nowhere near as alluring in person. But I never wanna be someone's bad date experience, so I tried to keep my distance, but still give her a fun night. Dropped her off. That was that. The next day I called her, told her that I think she's great, but that the spark I'm looking for just wasn't there. She flipped. She called me every name in the book, insulted me in every way she could possibly fathom, and so I just ignored her after apologizing. She called me a few hours later, apologizing for her behavior, and then crying relentlessly. This, being way beyond my comfort level, had to end. So I told her I didn't want to speak to her anymore, and that I wish her nothing but good fortune and luck. She then proceeded to yell at me for allowing her to cry, like that was my decision, and for being an asshole. Her words. Then, she threatened to slash my tires, break all the windows on my car, and go to my place of work and tell everyone I raped her. Luckily this was all in text messages, which of course I saved and screenshotted. Oh, but it isn't over. I woke up for work a few days later, got in my car, and pulled out of my driveway. My street looks like a giant dung, with 2 circles at the end. Neighborhood legit looks like a dick. The roundabout on my left exiting my street has no exit. The right testicle leads to the main road. I check my left, and I swear I see her in a car. Nah, couldn't be her. Nobody is that crazy. I pay no mind. Stop at the gas station. Get my coffee. Back in the car. I get to work, and it's still dark out. I was opening the place up, and I see the same car pull into the parking lot behind me. It's her. At this point, I know it's fucking her. I act like I don't see her, make sure the security cameras are on, call the cops and wait. She parked on the opposite side of my building, waited, and walked around the building to my car, and just stood there, like she was contemplating actually slashing my tires. She starts to walk away, evidently deciding that she isn't going to, and then turns back. Fuck. She's gonna do it. I rush out to stop her, fearful for my car and the fact that she might have a knife on her, and when I exit the building, the cops pull up. After a brief exchange with the police in which I show them the texts she sent me, she gets searched, and they discover a hammer in the front pouch of her hoodie. She gets arrested. I have a fucked up story to tell my underling employees, and I get to wonder what I did that incited such bizarre behavior. Edit #1. I would post a Google Earth image of my neighborhood, but given the nature of the above story, I would really rather not. I had the misfortune of being one girl's target when she knew some information about me. I'd rather not give folks a map of my exact location to all of Reddit, especially since this comment has blown up. Edit #2. People are asking how she knew where I lived. We lived close to one another, and she knew my town pretty well. So on our date, when I stupidly divulged information such as my home's proximity to town landmarks, it wasn't a hard find. Additionally, she probably skipped the searching and googled my info. Edit #3. Some folks love the ampersand, some hate it. I never anticipated my liberal usage of, and to be so hotly contested. If it makes you feel any better, I wrote 400 plus papers in college for myself and other students, and was forced to use, and in all of those, it bothered me very much. Edit #4. Calling my employees underlings has some people hot. If it makes you feel any better, the vast majority of my workforce were close friends of mine, so me calling them that was mostly for bants. It was a running joke within our group of friends, and one they didn't have a problem with, because outside of that, they knew I was taking care of them at work. Edit #5. As popularly requested, a drawing of my neighborhood. Forgive my horrendous artistry, and generally shitty scale. Edit #6. Thank you for gold, beautiful stranger. Broke up with a girl because I found out she was cheating on me with her ex. She locks herself in my bathroom and smashes a glass frame picture of us. Proceeds to slice her arm open with the shards. She tells me I'm doing this because you're leaving me and there's nothing you can do about it. Jokes on her. I walk outside and call the cops. We are in college affiliated housing just off the campus, so the cops are there in seconds and they Baker Act her. I thought that was the end of it. Nope. For the next couple months she shows up randomly at my apartment between 3 and 6 in the morning and bangs on my window. The way my apartment was designed was the first room's window was next to the front door, and of course that's the room I was in. Her goal was to see if I was with another girl. Most of the times not the case, but on those times I was, that was the last time I saw those girls. Lol. Then I see her in a local college bar one day. It's a pretty big bar, so I walk the other way and chill with my friends on the other side of the bar, hoping she didn't see me. Full disclosure, this is the hottest girl I've ever dated, period, including my current fiancé. I mean 11/10ths on any man's scale, and at best I consider myself a 7/10ths. So I done well. About an hour after I've been there, I go take a piss and see her talking to about 6 dudes, and I don't think much of it. I'm just happy she didn't see me, but she did, and when I leave the stall, I'm immediately surrounded by those same clowns. They start going on about how she said I was abusive, and I immediately knew what was about to go down. Knowing I couldn't fight my way out of this, I went the opposite route. I started overly congratulating the guys. Listen, I'm so happy for you guys. She's hot, right? Oh man. Who's gonna be the lucky guy to get his dick wet tonight? It definitely took them by surprise. The alpha asked me what my deal was, and I told him I was thrilled he was the next man up. I even tried to shake his hand, which definitely threw him off, but also gave me a moment to talk. I told him the brief backstory and that I'd never laid a hand on her. And then I asked him why he thought she was wearing a long sleeve shirt when it was 99 degrees outside. It took him a second, but to his credit he picked up on what I was saying. He tells his boys to chill for a second and walks over to her. As she's now standing outside the bathroom, he asks her to lift up her sleeve, and she immediately starts crying. She storms over and throws her drink on me, and then runs to a bouncer and starts going off about how I grabbed her and tried to sexually assault her. Immediately I'm grabbed by bouncers, but lo and behold, Alpha and his crew stepped up and totally had my back. Got in between me and the bouncers and point the finder at the girl. Told them they were about to beat my ass over her lies, but that I hadn't touched her and had her ass tossed instead. A week later I filed a restraining order, went to court, had witnesses show up, including Alpha. Dude stepped up, even with his testimony that he and his boys were about to jump me. At the end of the day, because I wasn't in fear for my life, i.e. I didn't think she could kill me, the restraining order was denied. So for the next few years this girl showed up at my place randomly and there was not a thing I could do about it legally until she married her ex that she cheated on me with. But still to this day, 6 years and 2 kids later, once a year I still get the random "hey, meet me downtown tonight" texts. If there is any happy ending to this, it's that the alpha and myself became good friends through us both being Eagles fans. A girl who lived in my dorm in college claimed someone attacked her on campus while she was walking back from evening classes. She ended up coming to my buddy and I first, then we called campus police. After explaining why it was a good idea, she asked me to come sleep in her dorm with her to help her feel safe. I obliged. So I spent the night on the floor while she was up in her lofted bed. Over the next couple days the investigation found the time she gave for the attack didn't show her on the camera of the area. She withdrew her statement and apologized, admitted she was obsessed with me and my buddy and was desperate for our attention. After a few counseling sessions she apologized and we respectfully asked she not make contact with us moving forward. My buddy and I were definitely friendly and hung out with her in the common several times, but neither of us had an interest in the way she wished before she faked being attacked. She went as far as to bruise her own neck and scratch her arms. She didn't claim she was raped, but said the guy had a knife. She made the clams a couple days after another girl on campus was actually attacked in the same area and uses similar description that girl gave of the attacker. Couple years later my buddy looked her up, said she was doing okay now, in a healthy relationship. I kind of get the chills when I think about the night I slept on her floor, whether or not she was just watching me the whole night or doing anything weird. Back in high school, I received a weird voicemail asking me to check my mailbox. I did when I took our dog out, and it was a letter written to me in toothpaste from a girl that went to the other high school and I had literally never met or seen before. After a few more creepy messages, I called back and threatened to call the cops for stalking and harassment. Never heard back. Looked her up on Facebook and it turned out she already had a children with an incredibly bland, alliterative name. Still no clue why she seemed to be obsessed with me, but I took my phone number off of Facebook pretty darn quick. Edit. Yeah, so to clarify on the toothpaste thing. Yes, toothpaste. Like a mini tube of green kids toothpaste squeezed out of the tube onto a sheet of paper to write some semblance of letters and words. The tube was also in my mailbox. I forget if the letter was folded up at all, since the paper would have stuck to itself. It was just really weird, and I wonder why anyone would think to do that aside from trying to come off as super creepy. I had a 20-minute conversation with a woman at an airport bar. Pleasant enough conversation. We were both a little flirty, and she was attractive and seemed nice. I left to catch my flight, and while I did sort of regret not getting her number, I didn't think much of it again. A couple of weeks later she showed up at my house banging on the door at 10 p.m. She had Facebook stalked me, which is acceptable I guess, but because I don't use Facebook very often, I didn't see or reply to her messages. So, like any sane person would do, she figured out where I lived, got on an airplane, and came to confront me about the situation. At that point I was already way over the whole thing, but she was basically stuck in my city for the next 3 days until her return flight, and she didn't have much money, so I kinda had to let her stay with me. It was pretty awkward, but it wasn't all terrible. I mean, she was a nice girl and pretty as a peach, but I was just too weirded out. If she had written me a letter, or waited until I saw her messages, then we would probably be married right now. I couldn't get past the crazy stalker behavior though. Years and years back I worked in a call center and was friends with this girl. Didn't think anything of it until she propositioned me to have sex with her. While I was flattered, I told her I was dating someone else and I was not going to cheat. Forward to a few days later, I go into work and get pulled into ours. Turns out she's now filed a sexual harassment claim against me. She worked in one area away from me, but they decided I needed an assigned seat beside my supervisor so that we would have no interaction period. I was fine with that until her friends started sitting not far from me, usually right in front of my field of view, and she'd come over and sit and talk to them, antagonizing the situation. My boss saw what was going on and brought it up to us. She was pushing the situation, but it was her words, not mine or my boss. Few more weeks of me being watched like a hawk go by, and I go into work, only to find security and my boss waiting for me. Apparently she felt that me looking in her general direction was harassment enough, so she filed another claim, this time saying I've been sending explicit messages and emails to her. This time my boss fought for me, but I got sent home, walked out in front of the entire call center surrounded by security. I remember writing an email to ours and management that night stating I had absolutely zero contact with her since the night she propositioned me and offered my computer, a lie detector, anything to prove my innocence, as long as they would question her. Well, they apparently brought that to her, and she ends up confessing that she made the whole thing up and that she did that to another employee and got them fired because they turned her down. They let her keep her job, in fact gave her a fat severance package a few months later. I got stuck in the same punish seat, being threatened that if I told any coworker what happened I'd be fired. I left a few weeks after that, but she had ruined my reputation. In that line of work I couldn't find a job for anything for a while. Few years down the line she spots me on a dating app and tried to hit me up. To this day I still don't get it. Was seeing the girl for like 6-ish weeks. We went out one night and she said she had to work late the next day but wanted to come over after. So I gave her my apartment spare key because why not, and told her to let herself in. I ended up falling asleep waiting for her. I woke up at like 12 AM and noticed there was like a TV light on in the living room. I just figured she was watching something and maybe grabbing a snack before she came to bed. I got up to say hi, rounded the corner, and she was on my computer sifting through my Facebook. I asked her what she was doing, and it was obvious she had no idea I was awake and freaked out. Needless to say I told her to give me my key back and showed her the door. Funny thing is, if she asked I would have let her look. I had nothing to hide. I would have thought it was weird, but everyone has their trust issues. But doing something like that behind my back was not cool. To this day I never leave my computer without hitting Win-L to lock it. I was at the grocery store with my wife, then 2-year-old daughter, and twin then infant sons. My wife was pushing a double stroller with our daughter and one of the boys in it, and I was carrying the other, who was calmly cuddled up to my shoulder. We're in the produce section when some random middle-aged woman that I had never seen before spots us, makes a beeline towards me, stretches out her hands, and tries to take my kid out of my arms. She didn't look at my wife or me, didn't say a word to either of us. She just literally tried to grab my son from me with no prompting or invitation whatsoever. I stepped away from her and shielded my kid. My wife chased her off. That wasn't the only weird creepy middle-aged / older woman to come out of the woodwork when the twins were still babies, but she was the most frightening. I was at the pub with some friends, and one of them left a scarf at a now packed table. She was feeling socially awkward and asked me to get it. I thought no big deal, I'll get it and show her there's nothing to be worried about. I asked a woman in her early 20s, I was 18, if she could pass me the scarf. She got up, walked over to me, wrapped it around my neck, and proceeded to try choke me with it, really going for it. Her hands were shaking from the force she was putting into pulling the two ends of the scarf. The pub was packed but everyone just stood there not exactly sure of what was happening, myself included. After what felt like ages, two guys pulled her back to her table. They were looking at me worried, shaking their heads with faces that said we have no idea. Everyone around the table clearly knew her and was shocked by her behavior. I can't help but think about how differently this would have played out if the genders were reversed. If a man did that to a woman in a crowded pub, he'd get thrown out and the police would be called. Third week of May of 1993. I broke up with my girlfriend, but she still had my choir letter jacket. We were in high school, but going to different high schools. Last day of school, I walked from my high school to her house to get my letter jacket. I get to her house and I see she is not home, so I sat towards the other end of the street waiting for her. Hours later, she finally comes home, so I start walking towards her house. She goes inside. I wait a bit, knock on the door, and say, "Melinda, I just want my choir letter jacket, and I'll leave you alone." 30 minutes go by and finally she comes out with it. I'm ready to walk home, but no, she offers a ride home, to which I say, okay, but I have no interest in talking. Get home and she leaves. Jump to fall of 1993. I'm working at JCPenney's in their optical area. Close for the night, come out and notice some guy parked next to my car. Blow it off. Leave, and after a few miles, I noticed this guy is following me. Okay, time to drive to the police station. I stop at a gas station that had a payphone and call the non-emergency phone number for the police and told them the situation. I drive to the police station, and as I get closer, the officer stops me, and the car following me gets barricaded in by two police cars. I found out this person was a retired Texas sheriff that had been hired by my ex, whose father is also a retired Texas sheriff, to keep tabs on me. He gets brought inside, and I walk him into calling my ex and tell her he got arrested for following me and she had to come bail him out. So she shows up with her dad and shit hits the fan. I ended up putting a restraining order on the ex-sheriff along with her entire family. 5 years later, she sent me an invitation to her wedding. I mailed it back with no postage, written on the invitation, "Fuck off." Had a disagreement over buying her some new outfit dress thing, with the supposed victory going to me with "we don't have the money right now and we'll see next paycheck" compromise. About an hour later, while I was cooking dinner, she came up and apologized, then came in for a hug, which started nice and somewhat affectionate, but ended with her pulling her arms away very quickly across my back. This was to have the two razor blades she had sliced to deep slashes across my back. She ran away and locked herself in the bathroom. I called 911 and went got stitches and all the medical things, had insurance, thankfully. Obviously the relationship ended then and there. Looking back like 15 years later, it is really strange, as we were together for about 3 years and didn't have any major fights or physical altercations before that happened. It was so trivial with some massive escalation, but in the end it taught me that yes, I can cut someone out of my life. Figuratively, woo puns. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.